Now let's turn to Politics Monday. I'm with our regular duo, Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report and host of Public Radio's Politics with Amy Walter, and Tamara Keith from NPR. She also co-hosts the NPR Politics podcast. Hello to both of you. It is Politics Monday, so let's talk about this Iowa poll we were just discussing. Amy, what do you make of it?
Well, Elizabeth Warren has had a great summer, and it shows. When you talk to folks who are in and around Iowa, that's what you were hearing at the Iowa State Fair this summer. All the buzz was about Elizabeth Warren, and now it's borne itself out in this poll. And I do think it's important, yes, as Ann Selzer points out, that things are fluid. Everything's fluid in Iowa. In fact, I remember going back to other Democratic primaries where at this point, after a very good summer, it looked like Howard Dean not only was going to win Iowa, but was going to be the nominee. So was Hillary Clinton in 2008, who was doing quite well in the September Des Moines Register poll. But Iowa, it tends to be that around Thanksgiving time, Iowa voters, even though they're paying a whole lot of attention, really get it into another gear. What's different, though, this year, I feel like that Iowa has taken on just a whole new dimension. It's always important. It's always it sets the pace for the campaign. But this year, with the issue of electability so important in the minds of voters, the winner then gets to make the case that they are a winner. Now, you can't say just because you win a primary that means you're going to beat Donald Trump. But folks are looking for a winner, and I think they're going to take cues from Iowa in a way maybe even more so than we've seen before.
And so Elizabeth Warren gets a little bit of a bump out of this.
Yes, and if you've been out talking to voters, you've been hearing she is, at the moment, the excitement candidate. And part of the way her campaign has been showing that is they don't want to talk about polls, they don't want to talk about horse race, but then they hold a really big rally in New York. And that is sort of another way that they're making an electability argument, which is to say, look, Elizabeth Warren can get a really big crowd in a very liberal urban place. You know who else did that in 2016? Bernie Sanders. I actually went to a rally in the very same park that Bernie Sanders held that looked a whole lot like that rally. And Elizabeth Warren is sort of capturing that mood at this time in the campaign in a way that Bernie Sanders did last time.
Huge crowds Bernie Sanders was getting. At the same time, we know that there are a number of candidates who are struggling. Those are the ones who are in the single digits in Iowa and in other polls, Amy. And in fact, one of them, Cory Booker, has said in the last few days, he said it openly, if I don't raise $1.8 million in the next few days, I can't stay in this race because of the pressure to do better.
The pressure to do better. Plus, no campaigns die because the member who's running decides or the candidate decides, you know what, I guess I didn't want to be president. They always run out of money. And it's hard to sustain money when you're not either moving in the polls or making any change, it looks like, in the other dynamic. He's been on the stage in all the debates. I think personally he's done a very good job. He's been very effective as a debater, but it hasn't seemed to really translate. And I think for so many voters now, they like basically the known brands, and they're choosing between the known brands of Biden, Warren, and Sanders, and they haven't been interested as much in looking around for those people who they don't know so well.
Go ahead, Tam.
Yeah, one of the challenges that Cory Booker has been facing and that several of the candidates have faced is the cost of acquisition of donors.
Right.
And that is a very technical thing that I'm saying, but it's a real issue. They are having to spend a lot of money on Facebook ads and other ways of going out and getting more individual donors, and that is all related to the Democratic Party's qualifications for the debates. It's really creating a dynamic that hasn't existed in past primaries.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of grumbling, the same grumbling you have from campaigns saying, boy, if we didn't have to spend all that money trying to get these online donors, we'd have enough money to be in this race.
You're seeing that. You're seeing that in a number of places. In fact, there's a story in Politico today quoting the former Iowa State Democratic Party chair saying it's a national primary based on the worst foundation, name ID and money. He said we're supposed to be the party of ideas. He's criticizing what the party is doing and squeezing these candidates.
In some ways, but I would argue part of the reason that Elizabeth Warren has been so successful is because she has been the candidate of ideas, because she has been the one candidate to really break through, not just with, I have a plan, but she has a narrative. She has a narrative and a case that she's making for not just her, but for her entire presidency, that people are really attaching to. She's made it personal. She's very much connecting with people beyond just, it's not just a like shiny object kind of attachment.
But we could be heading for debates in the coming months with many fewer candidates on the stage.
Right, and when you talk to voters, they are overwhelmed by the number of candidates. And certainly these debates have been overwhelming in that when there are 10 people on stage, even, like we try to talk about it on our podcast afterwards, and you can't even fit all of the candidates into the podcast afterwards, it's very difficult to manage. And so that's part of what the DNC is doing. But then you have candidates who say, but wait, this is my only shot to get in front of people.
Completely different subject. All the news of the last few days about the whistleblower in the intelligence community, talking about the president having a conversation with the president of Ukraine, Amy, in which there may have been a promise. We don't know. It's believed to have been about pressuring the president of Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden.
Right.
So the question I have for the two of you is this leading some of those Democrats who've been resistant to going for a full-blown impeachment? Is it changing some minds?
I think that's the question that Tam and I were both searching around for today, making calls and trying to figure out if it's really changed the dynamic. My sense from talking to some folks is, look, this is certainly a new wrinkle because it's no longer about Mueller. I think that the sense was the Mueller report had sort of played its way out, and yes, they could continue to have more hearings about some of the characters there, but this is an entirely different situation. There's still a worry, as you pointed out, we don't have the facts yet, and so what they were telling me is we need to see that transcript. We need to understand what was actually said before we come out, but this is definitely opening new territory.
There was a member of Congress, Tam, I guess we've just learned this afternoon, freshman Democrat from Minnesota, Dean Phillips, who had been in the camp of no on impeachment proceedings, is now moving in that direction because of all this.
And there has been a slow movement of Democrats. The numbers do continue growing, and this is another thing that is weighing on some of them. Nancy Pelosi yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, used stronger language than she's used before in referring to the way the administration is sort of stonewalling investigations. I think we will know more by the end of this week whether the whistleblower complaint will be seen by the relevant congressional committees or whether this is going to be that same dynamic that's played out over any number of issues that Democrats in Congress have been trying to investigate. And in some ways, they're just stuck.
Yeah, and if Republicans don't move, then the dynamics remain the same too, right? If there's no movement either from Republicans in the House or a sense that Republicans in the Senate want to push this forward, then we're kind of back at square one, to your point.
And, one tweet from Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, sort of wringing his hands, is not really a big movement there.
Yeah.
All right. We heard it here. Tamara Keith, Amy Walter, thank you.
You're welcome.